everyone. Welcome to the program. I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching NET25 World News. And now for the headlines. Washington and its allies challenge North Korea at the United Nations over claims Pyongyang is breaching arms control measures by supplying weapons to Russia to use in its war in Ukraine. President Joe Biden seeks a reset in North Carolina following a stumbling debate performance against former President Donald Trump. Israel's military says it is conducting raids backed by airstrikes in northern Gaza, killing dozens of militants in an area where it had declared the command structure of Hamas dismantled months ago. A Myanmar ethnic minority armed group was battling junta troops in a ruby and gem mining hub. Kpop sensation 17 expressed deep gratitude upon being appointed UNESCO Goodwill Ambassadors. Washington and its allies challenged North Korea at the United Nations on Friday over claims Pyongyang is breaching arms control measures by supplying weapons to Russia to use in its war in Ukraine. Washington's deputy envoy to the UN, Robert Wood, hit out at what he said were unlawful arms transfers from the DPRK to Russia.
Today we will hear from a leading independent think tank on its findings related to remnants of ballistic missiles recovered in Ukraine, which it attributed to the DPRK.
Jonah Leff, executive director at the Conflict Armament Research, which tracks the use of weapons in war, told the Security Council that CAR had found evidence of North Korean ballistic missile use in Ukraine in breach of sanctions.
In January 2024, a CAR field investigation team physically documented the remnants of a ballistic missile that struck Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, on January 2nd, 2024. Mr. President, these are the remnants of the missile that we encountered. CAR documented the missile's rocket motor, its tail section, almost 300 internal components manufactured by 26 companies from 8 countries and territories. Based on several unique features observed during the documentation, CAR determined that this missile was either a KN-23 or KN-24 manufactured in the DPRK in 2023.
Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia denied that Moscow had sought to undermine sanctions and opposed the presence of Ukraine and the European Union at the meeting.
Что касается домыслов о применении России в рамках специальной военной операции на Украине северокорейских ракет, то они не соответствуют действительности. Так называемый инспекционный доклад санкционных экспертов на эту тему является классическим заказным материалом, который был составлен непрофессионалами с многочисленными процедурными нарушениями и логичными несостыковками. А обломки неопознанных ракет были любезно предоставлены так называемым экспертам, среди которых не было ни одного профессионала в области баллистики. Киевским режимом подтверждений подлинности фрагментов ракет в отчете этих экспертов не приводится.
On June 23, the ATACMS missile provided to the Ukraine authorities by United States, they hit Russian territory Sevastopol, causing more than 150 innocent civilian too, including 2 children. This shows that the country which should be called to account and condemned at the Security Council are none other than the United States and its follower, which supplied weapons of mass destruction to Ukraine.
That further developments in menacing direction may follow the last week's signing by the Russian and DPRK leaders of the so-called Treaty of Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, as this agreement effectively paves the way for further deepening of military cooperation between Russia and DPRK. The impact on security situation both in our region and on the Korean Peninsula could be detrimental.
Washington was joined by allies France and Britain in its condemnation of what it says are sanctions-busting arms shipments from North Korea to Russia.
Russia's elimination of the 1718 Committee panel of experts unilaterally terminated 14 years of Council consensus supporting the panel's work. However, Russia and the DPRK cannot bury public reporting, including on the unlawful arms transfers from the DPRK to Russia. Independent experts continue to publish reporting that fills this gap and keeps violations in the public eye. We condemn, in the strongest possible terms, those unlawful transfers which have significantly contributed to Russia's ability to conduct its war against Ukraine. To publish reporting that fills this gap and keeps violations in the public eye. We condemn, in the strongest possible terms, those unlawful transfers which have significantly contributed to Russia's ability to conduct its war against Ukraine.
Putin has slammed the United States for its ongoing military support for Ukraine, saying last week that he doesn't rule out sending weapons to North Korea.
Российская Федерация не исключает для себя развитие военно-технического сотрудничества с Корейской Народно-Демократической Республикой в соответствии с подписанным сегодня документом.
President Joe Biden seeks a reset in North Carolina following a stumbling debate performance against former President Donald Trump.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat for everything America stands for. Now, folks, I don't know what you did last night, but I spent 90 minutes on the stage debating a guy who has the morals of an alley cat. Did you see Trump last night? My guess, he said, I mean it sincerely, a new record for the most lies told in a single debate. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Hello, Virginia. Did anybody last night watch a thing called The Debate? That was a big one. But as you saw on television last night, we had a big victory against a man that really is looking to destroy our country. He's the worst. He's the most corrupt, the most incompetent president in the history of our country. The question every voter should be asking themselves today is not whether Joe Biden can survive a 90-minute debate performance, but whether America can survive 4 more years of crooked Joe Biden in the White House. Top of their game, and he was never really at the top of his game. He was never very good, but now he's really not good. Last night was a defeat not only for Biden, but for the entire radical left Democrat Party and the fake news media. Many people are saying that after last night's performance that Joe Biden is leaving the race. But the fact is, I don't really believe that because he does better in polls than any of the Democrats they're talking about. You've seen that, Glenn. These polls come out with some of the names they're being, like Gavin Newsom. He can't run California. He's one of the worst governors.
Midway through the debate, aides explained that his hoarse voice was due to a cold. One of America's most influential newspaper, the New York Times, called in an editorial for President Joe Biden to step aside and allow another Democrat to challenge Donald Trump for the White House in November.
Last night, I think everyone can see the objective fact that we have been discussing here for a long, long time, that President Biden is not up to the job. I mean, everyone sees that clearly. And it's nothing we take pleasure in pointing out because it's so dangerous, because we're concerned about our stature and standing on the world stage. Our adversaries see exactly the same thing that all of us see. And so this is serious business. I think the contrast between the two men last night was so stark, and I think everyone, if they look at this objectively, they have to come to the same conclusion. Donald Trump is the only man on that stage that's qualified and capable of serving as the next president, and the election cannot get here soon enough.
Now the campaign faces questions about what lies ahead for the 81-year-old president. Mr. Biden and his campaign swiftly dismissed calls for him to step down as the candidate. And among those to rally behind Mr. Biden was former President Barack Obama, who tweeted, "Bad debate nights happen, and this election is still a choice between someone who fought for ordinary folks his entire life and someone who only cares about himself." Mr. Obama wrote, adding that Mr. Trump is someone who lies through his teeth for his own benefit.
Compared to a person who was lying the whole time, we saw integrity on one side and dishonesty on the other. That's how I saw it.
Matthew Schmidt, a political science professor at the University of New Haven, believes Joe Biden's disastrous performance in the CNN debate has made the race Donald Trump's to lose.
President Biden had a terrible night. I think that you could see that in the first few minutes. And I think at this point, honestly, it's Donald Trump's race to lose. It was that bad for President Biden. I think what we saw last night was nothing surprising except in its extent. We've seen all of the lost train of thoughts. We've seen, the sort of blank facial expressions before. So I don't think there was anything new. It was just, extenuated by the context of the debate. And look, I'm not saying that Biden is not capable of being president, but I'm saying he looked that way last night.
He also discussed the potential implications of replacing Biden on the ticket.
People have openly talked about on air last night the possibility of having President Biden step down and replace him on the ticket, however difficult and sort of unimaginable that is. I think one thing that foreign audiences don't understand is that American parties, have rules for their delegates, and they're complicated, arcane rules.
He also explained the complexities of replacing Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate.
And Joe Biden's delegates are pledged to him. And in order to release those delegates, as it's called, to vote for someone else, he has to name who that other person is. And it's not clear that by the rules, he can name anyone other than his vice president, or at least it's not clear that those delegates aren't bound to vote for his vice president. So it's not just Joe Biden that would have to be convinced to step down if the Democrats want to run a different candidate. It's Kamala Harris, too. And that's two people you have to convince to give up the power of the American presidency.
Then he discussed potential alternatives to Biden as the Democratic candidate.
The first name that pops up was Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. The problem there, again, is Kamala Harris. If it's a Harris and Newsom ticket, then by law, California's 54 electoral votes can't go to the Democratic ticket. So it can't be Newsom and Harris. It can only be one or the other. The other name, of course, that I've heard batted about, probably with the most excitement, is Michelle Obama. But I would find it hard to believe that she would come out and take on this office, right? Take on the task of sitting through a campaign with Donald Trump, knowing everything that's going to be thrown at it.
So what does President Joe Biden need to do to recover from his debate performance?
Joe Biden has to get out in public as much as possible now, and he has to show that he can follow a train of thought through. He has to be funny. He has to be energetic. He has to be everything he wasn't last night. And he has to do that over and over and over again in order to have any hope of wiping out the impression that he left in last night's debate.
And then he analyzed Donald Trump's debate strategy. Take a listen.
Well, at a certain point last night, I saw Trump get this smile on his face, and I thought he looks like a snake that's decided he doesn't have to rush to devour his prey. He can just sort of sit back and toy with it. And he was very smart. He didn't get in the way of Biden, tripping himself up. And I think if I'm Trump, that's what I want to keep doing. I want to draw Joe Biden out into public, into events. I want to keep saying the same things I've been saying. I want to keep trying to provoke him. And I want to let Joe Biden lose the race.
And now we're heading over to Atlanta, Georgia, where the first of two debates between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump took place. Our correspondent, Philip Toledo, shares with us the issues American voters want resolved come November, regardless of which of the two contenders takes the highest seat in America. Take a look.
As President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are set to square off in the highly anticipated presidential debate, we asked American voters which issues matter the most to them, regardless of who takes Washington in November. Biden and Trump squared off in a crucial U.S. presidential debate that carries enormous stakes for both candidates. The two battled for the approval of undecided voters and any slim advantage in their neck-and-neck race for the White House. Millions of Americans tuned in to the highly anticipated clash that fires the starting gun on what promises to be a summer of campaigning. This in a deeply polarized and tense nation still reeling from the chaos and violence that accompanied the prior election in 2020. With only two debates this election cycle and national polls showing the pair locked in the tightest of contests, the presidential debate here in Atlanta, Georgia, takes on heightened significance. Let's find out from American voters what matters to them most when it comes to what they want fixed, improved, or changed come the new administration.
The economy, and two would be the proposition in Congress right now to totally take marijuana off the illicit drug list. People don't understand what the exact consequences of this is, because right now marijuana usage and accidents is overtaking alcohol usage and accidents extensively.
One thing that I hope that they do fix is the cost of inflation, and also the taxes for restaurant workers as well.
Inflation affects every one of us. And I'd argue that inflation affects every industry. And in my industry of real estate, I definitely have seen the negative effects of inflation.
If there's no jobs, you don't have a chance to move around so you can make the money enough to raise your kids and the family.
I would love to see our economy get back on track. I would love to see inflation be controlled. I would love to have more American jobs. And I definitely would love to see how we could get control of this country. Furthermore, I would love to also see how we could instill, as a country, values to our children who are our future for this country.
Primarily, people are affected by the inflation, even though every single one have received some kind of pay raise, minimum wage has risen. But the drawback of that is that the inflation has also gotten worse.
I don't really care who wins, because regardless of who's in office, it doesn't matter, because they are not going to personally help me and my family out. So what I've realized is I need to be the president of my own household and be able to take care of my own kids and my wife, because at the end of the day, if I can't feed my family and I can't, put diapers on my kids, then the president of the United States won't do that for us.
Peace in the Middle East and demilitarization of occupied land, demilitarization in the Philippines too.
I want to see some changes regarding the voters' rights, because we have been established here, we live here, we pay taxes, and just like everyone else, we are affected by everything the government changes in their laws, and everything that they do not only affects the American people or citizens, but also those that have working visas, that have permanent residence, and that have been living here for over a decade. I believe that we should have the right to vote, because we also pay taxes just like everyone else does.
In California, it is in regards to the homeless crisis. We have so much homeless, not only in California, but I believe within the nation, and I want that to be addressed. It seems like it's soaring every year, and we should have a bill or measure to help house or get anything that would help the homeless crisis.
What I'd like to see is more access to universal health care and also housing. and resources for underserved and underprivileged citizens.
People in, middle class and marginalized communities. One of my biggest concerns is how much money has proliferated into politics, from the local level up to the Supreme Court. And one has to wonder what the average citizen like you and I, what chance do we have against one billionaire who can make policies, whatever policy he wants, as long as he pays a Supreme Court justice for it. We don't have any chance against that. The only chance we have is to vote. And so in that instance, I'd like a lot of our protections, a lot of our rights to remain protected, whether it's, civil rights, voting rights.
My main issue here is the affirmative action. Affirmative action is something that has been in place for years due to inequality for, minority students that are trying to get to these elite, Ivy League schools and even other schools.
Diversity, equality, and basically inclusion, because what makes the United States of America united, most importantly, is the different races, the different ethnicities, the different cultures, allowing us to be able to experience, of course, where we come from and how far we've come to where we can just come together as one big happy family and just enjoy each other's company and be united in peace, love, and positivity versus hate and pride and all that kind of stuff.
One thing that matters the most to me is bringing the nation back together. I feel like there's too much division and differences in opinion, and we need to get us back to that. And I would hope that whoever's in office is able to move us more towards that as a nation.
Opinions will vary as to who won today's presidential debate. But come November, whether by landslide or the smallest of margins, a clear winner will emerge. And then these issues that Americans care about will be in the hands of the next U.S. Commander-in-Chief. Whether or not they will be resolved remains to be seen. Philip Toledo in Atlanta, Georgia.
Environmental activists march in New York to demand Wall Street to stop funding fossil fuel projects in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico coast. Activists claim the projects are causing environmental devastation in mostly black and brown communities in the Gulf and across the globe. The protests ended with a mass civil disobedience at Citigroup's global headquarters, where many of the demonstrators were arrested.
1,000 people are gathering here in Zuccotti Park, where Occupy Wall Street started in 2011, to march over the Citigroup's global headquarters. They are going to participate in a mass civil disobedience to end fossil fuels because Citigroup is the world's largest funder of new coal, oil, and gas since the Paris agreements were signed. 100 people are going to be risking arrest when we get there, shutting down the global headquarters of Citigroup. And this is the biggest protest yet in a whole series of protests that are taking place this summer.
I am here in New York City to demand that the banks on Wall Street stop funding environmental racism in Texas and Louisiana.
Okay, we came here today to speak truth to power, to stop funding fossil fuels.
Ethnic minority armed group the Tang National Liberation Army clashed with junta troops in Mogok, Myanmar's ruby and gem mining hub, breaking a January ceasefire brokered by China. General Tharbon Kiao confirmed TNLA presence, noting Mogok's rich super ruby, sapphire, and semi-precious stone deposits. Junta spokesperson Zhao Mintun acknowledged ongoing battles as security forces to gain control. Residents reported artillery shelling and airstrikes since Tuesday, resulting in civilian casualties, including 4 deaths, prompting many to seek shelter. Mogok's pigeon's blood, rubies more valuable than diamonds, highlight the conflict's economic stakes amid opaque industry practices and long-standing regional tensions. In neighboring Kpop, clashes have claimed at least 10 lives and injured over 20 since Tuesday, according to local rescuers. The fighting has breached the China-brokered ceasefire that ended weeks of fighting in Shan State between the military and the TNLA and 2 other allied ethnic armed groups. A volcano in eastern Indonesia erupted twice, sending a hot cloud of ash as high as 7 kilometers into the sky. Now, the country's Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation shared an image of the thick column of gray ash towering among white clouds around Mount Ibu, located on the island of Halmahera in North Maluku province. No damage or casualties were immediately reported from the two eruptions, which took place within the span of an hour. The first occurred at 10:45 a.m. local time. Indonesia, a vast archipelago nation, experiences frequent seismic and volcanic activity due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Last month, Mount Ruwang in North Sulawesi province erupted more than half a dozen times, forcing thousands of residents of nearby islands to evacuate.
Lebih kepada batuk pilek. Soalnya di sini abunya kan keluar setiap hari. Mungkin sehari itu mungkin bisa 3 kali, jadi udara di sini memang sudah tidak bagus lagi untuk kita tempati di sini. Mungkin diare karena itu konsumsi sayur sekitar yang terkena abu ini, sehingga untuk sementara kami disuruh untuk stop untuk mengkonsumsi sayur, buah dan daun di sini.
Indonesian police have arrested more than 100 Taiwanese at a villa in Bali over alleged cyber fraud, according to authorities. The proliferation of cyber fraud groups in Southeast Asia has become a growing concern in recent years, and authorities in countries including China, Indonesia, and Malaysia have stepped up efforts to stop them. Bali immigration authorities said that after a tip-off from Indonesian police, they raided the villa in Tabanan Regency on Wednesday, where the group of 12 women and 91 men was found with hundreds of mobile phones and other electronic devices. They were accused of abusing immigration permits and conducting online scams targeting Malaysians, according to Indonesian immigration official Safar Muhammad Godam. He added that officials could not charge them because the alleged crimes fell outside their jurisdiction, but were closely working together with related authorities, including those in Malaysia. And they're currently being held at an immigration detention center in Bali for further questioning. Malaysia has seized 106 containers of dangerous electronic waste over the last 3 months and busted an illegal waste import syndicate after a tip-off from a watchdog group, according to a minister. Tens of millions of tons of e-waste are produced globally every year, and many discarded devices and appliances can leak heavy metals, plastics, and other toxic chemicals. Now, many countries, including Malaysia, have banned the import of e-waste, though illegal shipments remain a problem. Between March 21 and June 19 this year, Malaysian inspectors found 106 shipping containers filled with e-waste, according to authorities. Nick Ahmad, Malaysia's Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability Minister, said the containers will be sent back to their countries of origin without providing details about where they came from. He also added that an illegal import syndicate was involved. In 2022, the world produced 62 million tons of e-waste, and less than a quarter was recycled, according to the United Nations. Many wealthy countries send their e-waste overseas to poorer nations because it's cheaper and helps meet recycling targets. This increases the health and environmental risks in those countries, however. The latest seizures were prompted by information provided to Malaysia by the Seattle-based Basel Action Network, or BAN, which works to prevent the dumping of toxic waste by rich industrialized nations. Passengers arriving in Ninoy Aquino International Airport, or NAIA, are advised to wear face masks as a preventative measure against a surge of streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, or STSS, in Japan. As of June 2, Japan has reported a concerning rise in STSS cases, with nearly 977 infections documented, significantly higher than previous years. STSS is a seriously and potentially life-threatening condition caused by bacteria known as Group A Streptococcus, or GAS. While less common, STSS can sometimes be linked to a more serious complication called necrotizing fasciitis, often referred to as flesh-eating bacteria. and this condition causes rapid destruction of muscles, skin, and underlying tissues. The Manila International Airport Authority spokesperson Chris Bendijo announced on Friday that reminders have been placed throughout the airport, encouraging travelers to wear masks, sanitize their hands, and practice proper cough and sneeze etiquette. And these measures can help prevent the spread of gas and potentially reduce the risk of STSS and related complications. It's important to note that wearing a face mask is currently just a recommendation at NAIA and not mandatory. However, infectious disease specialist Rotjin Solante advises taking these precautions seriously, especially for those at higher risk or with weakened immune systems. Solante also highlighted that the Philippines already has cases of STSS. And it was a groundbreaking night in Kpop history as 17 from South Korea took the stage at the prestigious Glastonbury Festival, marking the first ever performance by a Kpop group at this iconic event. But they weren't the only Asian artists making waves this year. Joining the lineup at Glastonbury 2024 alongside global stars like Dua Lipa, Coldplay, and Shania Twain is Voice of Bass Prot or VOB, an Indonesian band known for their unique blend of heavy metal and hijabs. VOB is set to make history as the first Indonesian group to grace the Glastonbury stage. And this weekend promises to be a milestone for these talented Asian Pacific performers. And K-pop sensation 17 expressed deep gratitude upon being appointed UNESCO Goodwill Ambassadors. Joshua Hong, speaking from UNESCO's Paris headquarters, shared their pride in representing youth as ambassadors.
Meeting with youth delegates from around the world was an eye-opening experience, which got us thinking about what more we could do for our fellow young people. So when we received the designation letter from Director General Ajule for the ambassadorship, all of us were surprised and honored. We really thought it was meant to be. So today, we are truly thrilled to announce that we are joining hands with UNESCO to take our Going Together campaign to the next level. Today, we would like to share our vision as the ambassador for youth based on what we have learned in our very own lives.
He also emphasized their commitment by announcing a £1 million donation to a UNESCO Youth Grant for creative projects. UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay hailed the partnership, noting that 17 will significantly bolster UNESCO's mission and values, particularly in fostering peace among young people worldwide. Founded in 2015, 17 ranks among the world's top musical acts, trailing only Taylor Swift in global revenue last year, as per IFPI. Their album FML topped charts in 2023, and their digital presence continues to soar with billions of streams. The group has previously collaborated with UNESCO and performed at its Paris office. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25 World News, I'm Alma Angeles bidding you good night.